It was past midnight when he found the old house, perched on a hill like a black tooth against the stormy sky. Rain poured down in relentless sheets, and his car, a useless metal shell, had given up the ghost miles ago. He was soaked, cold, and desperate. All he needed was shelter, just until the storm passed. The house looked ancient, forgotten, but it was better than the raging weather. He trudged up the muddy path. Before his knuckles could even touch the weathered wood of the front door, it creaked open on its own, a groaning invitation into the darkness. Inside, the air was cold, heavy with the stale scent of dust and something else, something like old paper and dried flowers. The hallway stretched out before him, a long, dark throat lined with portraits. There were dozens of them. Faces of men, women, and children stared out from their gilded frames, each one painted with an uncanny, almost unsettling detail. A figure emerged from the shadows at the far end of the hall. An old woman, small and pale, dressed head to toe in black. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched her thin lips. "You look tired," she said, her voice a dry whisper, like leaves skittering across pavement. "You may stay the night." Overwhelmed with relief, he thanked her profusely. She nodded slowly and began to lead him down the hall. As they walked, he couldn't shake the feeling that the portraits were watching him. Their painted eyes seemed to follow his every move. Every face looked alive, too alive. The stillness in their gazes felt predatory. He shivered, blaming it on the cold. The guest room was stark and simple. A narrow bed, a small table, and a single candle burning with a low, sputtering flame. But the walls were covered in more portraits, and unlike the ones in the hall, these were all angled to stare directly at the bed. He tried not to look, forcing his gaze away. He told himself they were just paintings, canvas and oil, nothing more. Still, the feeling of being watched was suffocating. The old woman wished him a good night, her faint smile never wavering, and closed the door behind her. The click of the latch echoing in the silence. I lie awake, listening to the symphony of the storm. The wind howled like a grieving animal, and tree branches scraped against the window panes like long, skeletal fingers. Then he heard it. A new sound, cutting through the noise of the storm. Soft footsteps, just outside his room. Slow, dragging, like something heavy being moved through the darkness. He called out, "Hello, is anyone there?" But no answer came, only the faintest whisper of movement, seemingly from behind the walls themselves. His eyes darted to the nearest portrait, a man with a stern jaw and deep-set eyes. He felt a chill crawl up his spine. The man seemed closer than before. The eyes, which had been dull, now gleamed faintly in the candlelight. He blinked, hard, rubbing his own eyes. When he looked again, the man's expression had changed. The stern line of his mouth had twisted into a faint, knowing smile. He froze, his breath catching in his throat. The candle flame flickered violently, casting, dancing, monstrous shadows across the room. Panicked, he turned his head to another portrait. It was a young child, who he remembered had been painted in profile, looking away. Now, the child's head was turned, staring directly at him. Its painted eyes were wide and black. His heart hammered against his ribs. This was wrong. This was all wrong. He had to get out. He scrambled out of bed and reached for his bag. His only thought to run back into the storm, anywhere but here. He threw open the door, expecting to see the long hallway, but it was gone. Beyond the doorway, there was only a void. A vast, impenetrable darkness stretched before him, swallowing the candlelight from his room. And from that darkness came the sound of breathing. Not one breath, but a chorus of whispers. A soft, collective sigh that seemed to come from everywhere at once. He stumbled back into the room, slamming the door shut. The floorboards groaned under his weight. He turned, and his blood ran cold. Every portrait in the room seemed to lean forward from the walls, their frames groaning in protest. Dozens of painted eyes, all locked onto him, followed his every trembling move. He squeezed his eyes shut, pressing his palms against them. "This isn't real," he whispered to himself, a desperate mantra. "This is not real." When he opened them again, the room was plunged into absolute darkness. The candle had gone out, but he wasn't alone. In the pitch black, he could still see the faces. They were glowing, faintly, with a dead, phosphorescent light. He stumbled backward, his hands outstretched, until he bumped hard against the bed. And then he felt it. Hands cold, dry, and strong gripped his shoulders from behind. He let out a choked scream and spun around, but there was no one there. Only another portrait hanging on the wall above the bed. A new one. It showed a man, his eyes wide with terror, his mouth open in a silent scream. It was him. Pure, primal fear took over. He ran. He didn't know where he was going. He just ran. The house became a labyrinth. The halls twisted and turned in on themselves. An endless maze lined with more portraits, hundreds, maybe thousands of them. Each one was more lifelike than the last. Some of them appeared to be breathing, their chests rising and falling in a slow, unnatural rhythm. Their painted lips moved as he passed, forming silent, mocking words. The old woman's voice echoed through the impossible darkness, a disembodied whisper that coiled around him. "Don't wake them," she hissed. "They don't like to be watched." He collapsed to the floor, sobbing and trembling. At the far edge of the hall, a shadow began to peel away from the wall, taking on a three-dimensional form, then another, and another. Dozens of figures stepped out of their frames, their movements stiff and jerky. Taywera pale with hollow eyes and frozen, grotesque smiles stretched across their faces. They surrounded him, a silent, advancing army of the dead. He tried to get up, to run, but their hands, as cold as marble, were on him. They pulled him toward the wall, toward a single, ornate, empty frame that waited just his size. He screamed, a raw, ragged sound that was swallowed by the oppressive silence of the house. When the old woman returned in the morning, the storm had passed, and the sun cast weak rays of light through the dusty windows. The halls were still and quiet once more. She walked to where the guest room door used to be, and she smiled, a soft, satisfied expression. A new portrait hung there now, a man mid-30s, his eyes wide, his face a mask of pure terror, forever frozen in fear. She reached up and adjusted the frame slightly. "You look perfect," she whispered. Then she turned, slowly, and walked back down the long corridor. As Sepa said, the other portraits watched her go silent, patient, and terrifyingly alive. So if you ever find yourself lost on a dark and stormy night, and you come across an old house on a hill, and a frail old woman invites you in to take shelter, whatever you do, try not to look too closely at the paintings. Because if you stare long enough, you might just find one staring back. Thanks for listening to this terrifying tale. If you enjoyed it, please hit that like button. Subscribe for more chilling stories, and maybe leave a comment telling us what you would have done. Until next time, stay safe and perhaps stay out of old houses.